Carl and Lou here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life. It's time for the Nasties, another episode of our talk-through of the entire 72 films of the Video Nasty series. We're up to episode number 30 at this point, so we're getting there. Got a long way to go, but we are getting there. And we're touching upon one that is mostly forgettable, completely possible to watch uncut. Not that much of an exciting movie overall. Particularly, it's more interesting when you kind of read the backstory in regards to what it is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, but it's nothing like that. It is, of course, Night of the Bloody Apes. Released with approximately 3 minutes of pre-cuts in 1999. Later released uncut as of 2002. So like this has almost been available for 20 years uncut. That should give you a clue as to sort of the nasty aspect. Yeah. It is pretty tame. Be honest, it's pretty silly, quite cheesy a lot of the time in regards to the effects when transformations are happening. What it does do though, is it does have some top draw acting, particularly from the father figure in this who wants to save his son. There's a lot more. It's almost got an emotional depth to that.
Yeah, it's unusual for these kind of films, and like when you look at it as the name of it and the whole setup of it, you don't really expect that, but yeah, it's a nice aspect to it.
Yeah, it's just lacking in depth in the son character more than anything else. But before we get to that, Night of the Bloody Apes, it's the title of the 1972 English language version of the 1969 Mexican horror film La Horripilante Bestia Humana, which stands for the horrible man beast. So it's a remake of a movie that's only 3 years old, a Mexican horror film. That's also known as Horror y Sexo, as in horror and sex. And as Gomar, the human gorilla. So it's going on a lot of different names. Gomar. Yeah. The film was directed by Rene Cardona, and as I said, is the remake of his 1962 film Las Luchadores contra el Mediocre Arsenio. So again, we've got another film, and there's a remake of that, and that is The Wrestling Woman versus the Killer Doctor, the US title being Doctor of Doom.
Oh god, it's so complex.
It's just like, what? And that was the first in a series of films that blend elements of the lucha libre and horror genres. But it should be well noted that this remake, what it particularly changes, or this reimagining, however you want to call it, is it kind of drops the whole wrestling women versus the gorilla ape kind of thing. Yeah. That aspect. Well, there is the wrestling aspect in it.
Very brief.
She's not important to the plot, really. And she's certainly not the one taking down our villain or anything like that. This movie was prosecuted, which is quite surprising, really. The cast, Jose Elias Moreno as Dr. Krollman, so basically he's the father figure of it. Carlos Lopez Moctezuma as Goyo, Armando Silvestri as Lieutenant Arturo Martinez, Norman Lazarino as Lucy Osorio, Augustine Martinez Solaris as Julio Krollman, and Gerardo Zepeda as Monstro. Names are quite unimportant here, to be honest. The plot surrounds a scientist, a doctor, someone who's quite respected in his field. You know, you read a lot of plot that talks about references as a mad scientist. I never got the mad scientist part, really. No, he wanted to help his son, and he probably went to weird lengths, but it wasn't. It didn't come across as maniacal, cheesy mad scientist to me. Yep. Yeah, it's in particular, it's kind of like we're never really properly explained what's wrong with his son. That's one of the more intriguing things. He appears to have some heart issue or heart deficiency, something wrong, which is prompting this experiment, if you want, this transplant, whatever it might be, to occur. But we really don't get a lot of detail about the son. We see him in bed. When he's shot, it's up close to his face, and he's softly spoken to his father. We know he's ill. We just don't really know why he's ill.
Yeah. Not really so it's not really explained, but getting his film doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Its plot is very paper thin. Because elsewhere we've got this woman, which is Lucy, and she's a wrestler, basically. We do get a lot of stuff in the ring, and it's an interesting thing because it's lucha libre, but it's old school wrestling. So like, if you're like a modern wrestling fan, and you think lucha libre, you might be thinking of someone like Rey Fenix, Rey Mysterio Jr., kind of thing, these sort of things, flipping and flying around the ring, and stuff like that, crazy stuff that you're like, okay. And then you watch this and they're like, okay, they got masks on the lucha, but all it is predominantly arm drags. Yeah. If you know what an arm drag is, it's that move where it's just pull you over by your arm and stuff like that. Yeah. And we're kind of introduced to Lucy. She's in a match. She's being watched by her boyfriend. which is Lieutenant Arturo, Armando Silvesteri's character. And it seems like it's supposed to be real. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's real wrestling kind of thing. It's not what we know wrestling to be. It's not predetermined. It's not, it's not fake, basically. No. That kind of thing. And she ends up causing an accident where she knocks her opponent out of the ring and her opponent gets hurt. And it is a bit like when you watch real wrestling, not real wrestling, sorry, when you watch modern wrestling, you're like, that's so silly. She just fell out of the ring and that's apparently cause for panic, you know?
Yeah.
But predominantly, so much of Lucy's stuff is just her either in the ring wrestling or backstage where she's talking to her boyfriend, that kind of thing, and arranging stuff and so on.
She's a bit wooden, isn't she? She's not great.
Yeah, because it's weird. It's like they wanted to keep the wrestling link there from the original, but then didn't bother to go down the route of her bringing the ape creature to justice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was bizarre. Because when you said about it's going to be this, and I'm like, oh, cool, and then it wasn't that at all. No,
it isn't. It isn't.
It ends up with the woman gets in the beginning gets injured by her, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And obviously that leads into the events that happen afterwards.
Yeah, that's the first sort of link. So she becomes catatonic or something like that, or like in a coma, and the doctor, he takes her heart, steals her body, takes her heart, and plans to transplant it to his son. Now, probably what got this film in trouble more than anything else, likely, is that it does do open heart surgery imagery, and what is clearly real, because the quality is a little bit different, and there are some glaring errors. For example, there's a hilarious point where it's the doctor and his assistant, his Igor assistant, and they're doing the surgery, and so there's four hands, 2 pairs of hands. Yeah. Yet in the shot, we see there's 6 hands, so there's an extra person there. Don't know who it is, you know, because they're not in the wide shots. But that seemingly doesn't go right. So he ends up coming up with the idea. I don't know where the fuck he got this idea from, but he goes to a zoo. He gets into a zoo and tranquilizes and takes a gorilla. Yeah. Hilariously, it's like, that's a dude in a suit. Like, very obviously. Clearly, clearly in a suit. But his idea is to transplant the ape's heart, or the gorilla heart, into his son. Yeah. And, you know, you can kind of go, oh, is that the worst idea?
No, they do. Obviously, a lot of animal work is work with heart transplants and things like that. So it's not too far of a stretch. And like, nothing comes across as like him being like a mental laughing away.
Yeah, maniacally laughing.
It all seems like he's comes to the end of his tether and wants to help his son.
Yeah, he's trying to find some solution to save his son's life before I guess the day comes. And this does seem to work, except it does result in something that probably could never have been expected. It transforms his son into a hulking ape-like beast that grunts and kills and attempts to rape. That kind of thing. Because obviously it's a video nasty. We've got to have the sort of sexualised violence aspect too. Take this out. I mean, it's 1972, so you already know the effects aren't going to be great. And what they've kind of done is a sort of time-lapse transformation where they've laid one face to the other. So they've laid the beastly face over his face, and then they're fading one out over the other. So that's how they do that transformation effect. It looks okay.
It's not the worst at the time as well.
No, it's not. The problem is the end result. The end result of how he looks. It's just like a beastly face with fangs and lots of hair. The issue is, and where it becomes hilariously bad, is it also apparently transforms his body. Not in the sense that he becomes hairy or gorilla-like. No. He is smooth as cucumber, man. Like, he is smooth all over. He just apparently bulked up.
Yeah.
So, like, the person playing him, the son, with the gorilla face on, is clearly a different actor. Yeah. Because although we never saw his son's body...
It wasn't...
when he's lying in bed a lot, it's clearly not going... It's clearly not... He's quite thin arms and stuff like that. He's not this... He's got a restless physique, put it that way. Yeah, and he's hairless across his body. So you've got this real weird blend from his neck, because he's topless as well. For some reason now he's topless and just jeans. It's silly. That's the simplest way to put it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's silly. So he ends up breaking out and like he attacks a woman in her apartment and some people in the park. The police get involved trying to search him down, but it seems to not be permanent. He'll transform back and stuff like that. So, you know, there's an attempt to try and fix this problem. It never really comes to anything and all that, but does obviously eventually lead to Lucy becoming not a victim, but becoming an issue with him inside the same park. It's all kind of set in a very small amount of locations. And you notice that as well.
Cost.
Yeah. So we have the ring area and the backstage. We have the house and the basement where all the experiments and the scientist stuff taken place. We have a hospital, and then we just have the park and the area outside it. You know, and there's a shop as well where one woman managed to escape his grasp and run into the shop asking for help and stuff like that. That's about it. A lot of the time you get this really weird not weird, but this long shot of the park with this lighting in the background is giving this kind of glowing effect. You often see this when the police turn up and crowds and stuff like that as the son's being hunted. And obviously his father's trying to find him as well. We plan to use tranquilizer dots, try and save him and stuff like that. You kind of know where this is going. We laughed and joked about it when it was getting to the end and he's on top of the hospital roof. Our beast, he's on top of the hospital roof and he's got a little girl in his arms. And I was like, oh, are we doing the whole King Kong ending here? Like, you know, he's gonna be like, and it does kind of go that way as he's talked down to give the kid back, and then is shot dead and killed anyway. But you are kind of like, this isn't the whole Beauty Killed the Beast thing, because like previously, I mean, do we have sympathy for the son? Can you have sympathy for this character?
Yeah, because he didn't ask to have. He was just ill through all of this. He didn't ask for this kind of surgery, so it's kind of forced upon him, and it sort of didn't come across as like straight bad guy.
Okay.
It's just what had been put into him, mixed with his human DNA, he made him a beast.
I would almost agree with you, but this is what it lacks and why I can't quite get on board with that aspect. What it lacks is depth to the human side of the character. We didn't get to know him. We talked at the start of this video about the love aspect, and it's clear his father loves him, but that's acting coming from the father figure. The son tends to be one tone, one note. He doesn't have a load of lines. You know, he's never like, oh look, Dad. You know, like imagine a scene where after the first heart failure. The first heart transplant didn't work, and he's just, look, Dad, let me go. You know, I love you, and all that kind of thing. You'd be like, okay, maybe,
that makes sense,
But also, the problem is rather than I wouldn't have minded if the Beast was just going around and killing and stuff like that. That I can understand. But problem is they threw in where he breaks into the woman's apartment and attempts to rape her and stuff like that. You don't see that. You don't see it's sexual violence towards a woman, but you don't see an actual rape or anything like that. Just don't have that then, because that adds an extra level of nasty to this nasty. You know,
we've had that before in other films where like they've thrown something in, you're like, oh no, that's taking it over the edge. Like there's I know it sounds weird to have different levels, but there's certain things where you've not gone that far yet. Like you've just, but then once you've gone beyond, it's like that kind of goes a little bit.
You're not wrong. There are different levels of nasty in the nasties. And I completely understand what you're saying. It's in all aspects. Let's contrast Night of the Bloody Apes with something like Cannibal Holocaust or Cannibal Feroz. Those two, which are incredibly uber-violent and stuff like that. This doesn't have that level of violence. It's tame. The reason why it's been uncut since 2002, because it's tame by standards. It's really, and even the things that were cut, the open heart surgery and stuff like that, it's like, that's a problem?
Yeah.
That's weird, you know? That's weird, but that was the standards at the time, hence why it was a nasty and stuff like that. But when it comes to this aspect of this creature, I felt like they were trying to tell a more, like I said, a more thought-provoking story about like a father who wanted to save his son and it went wrong and this is what we end up with and stuff like that. A little bit Frankenstein to a degree. This is what I've created. Now I must be the one to put it down and stuff like that. I get all of that, but because it's very concise, because it's a remake and utilising elements, trying to utilise elements from an original story that don't quite fit, the whole Mexican wrestling, lucha stuff is so nonsensical. Like, if you removed all of that, you'd have a 40-minute movie. You know?
And it's just basically her having matches. It's not... It's weird,
Because it seems like we might be heading some of that, because after she injures her opponent in the ring, when she next goes back, she's very nervous and coy, and she ends up losing a match because of it. And it seems like that might be an angle and stuff like that, but it's really, really not. I'll admit, what I fucking wanted, and why the hell not, considering how cheesy the movie is overall, I wanted her donning a lucha mask and going out and wrestling this damn ape to the ground in the park. Situation.
That's what I pictured when you gave me the synopsis. I was like, well, that's what we're going to get then.
Yeah.
And then that didn't come to fruition.
No. In fact, the ending doesn't even really involve her at all. It involves the police on the top, and the ape man, his father, and she's shot before the father is then led away in cuffs. You know, feeling quite sad about what's going on. It's not a great movie. I mean, it's not even a good movie, is it? I mean, if we're honest.
it's just nothing to nuance it. A couple of bits are entertaining, like a couple of scenes are okay, but yeah, I wouldn't put this one on again.
Definitely, this is a one-time watch only. Yeah. I agree with you now. This is not something I'd want to watch again at all. Even recapping it, it's kind of like, okay, what do I actually remember from it? And it predominantly surrounds how the ape creature looks. And that's not a good thing, because that's probably the least lacking area of it, I think, overall.
Definitely.
Night of Bloody Apes. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon and help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?